Welcome to the Fearless Happiness Podcast, where we showcase phenomenal individuals who have overcome serious traumas, life obstacles, and challenges to find their own path to fearless happiness. Listen as Max Njist invites guests from all around the world to share their experiences and spread strength, hope, and faith. This is the Fearless Happiness Podcast, and this is Max Njist.
All right, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. This is Max from the Fearless Happiness Podcast. And again, I know my usual, but it's true. I have very special and amazing guests with me today. Carolee and Britton are joining me for a wonderful podcast today. So what I like to do, guys, is have you introduce yourselves to my audience, like who you are, what it is you do exactly, and then we're going to rock and roll.
Great. Well, Carolee and I are just what you would call your average couple. We actually kind of grew up in Mormonism, and we were married in the church, and basically our marriage and that whole lifestyle was threatened through infidelity and betrayal. And we decided to undertake healing and really met the challenge face on. And that first major step in our healing led us out of the Mormon Church because we realized that it wasn't going to give us the healing that we desired. And so over the next 5 years, we spent our time in deep shadow work, healing ourselves, healing our relationship, and finding a very united union, which we have now. It's a beautiful relationship, and now we're not so average, and we have a beautiful message and powerful journey and to share with people. And the key to all of that is how we did it. And we have this book that we'll be talking about today. It's called Ritual Shadow Work.
I want to add that in addition to all of that, we are parents to 4 children. So we did all of this while raising 4 amazing little people.
Wow. And that's a feat in itself, right? Trying to heal yourselves, let alone, and then raising your family at the same time, right? Wow.
Yeah, truly.
So I know, just like me, the audience is going to go like, we want to hear about the shadow work that they're talking about. But we'll get into that in a little bit. But I want to ask my questions and get this going. But right. It's interesting that you say that the church didn't provide the healing, right? Because, and this is my opinion, right? Like I haven't been to church in a long time, but it seems to be where there's organized religion. Sometimes you don't get what you need, like what you would think you would need from them, right? Because of their strict, what do you want to call it? Like beliefs, or right. Instead of helping, it seems like they drive people out. And I have nothing against the Mormons or the Catholics or anybody, but you know what I mean? I've heard this from other people where they have left the church because instead of getting help from the church, they got either shunned or belittled, or, they didn't get the help they need. So go back a little bit and talk. You don't have to get into detail, but like, what was that time like when, right? You talk about the betrayal and all that, and you're going to the church thinking, okay, they're going to help us get through this. And then you go, oh, that's not happening.
Yeah, I'll jump in first on that. So basically, the church had a process, and like a lot of I think pretty much all organized, churches do have a process of what they call repentance or penance, and that process is very structured and rigid and specific, and it isn't actually geared towards psychological, emotional, and spiritual healing. It is actually geared around how to get your behavior in line with church, you know, approved behavior, essentially to get in line with what the church wants you to behave like. And so we went through that process, but we came out the other side after a year, and there wasn't really, I mean, yeah, we had grown a little bit closer, but just because we had gone through that process, it hadn't given her or I true emotional healing. It hadn't given us any like deep understanding about the nature of betrayal or infidelity and why it was happening in our relationship. It hadn't given us the embodiment around our sexuality that obviously was at the root of some of this. And on top of all that, I didn't feel any closer to God. So it kind of a 4 score like slash. It didn't really meet the demand of what we were seeking.
I'll jump in and add, he was the betrayer. I was betrayed. And so in my emotional body, I had like actual PTSD, and significant trauma that I was coping with, that I was trying. And then you put having children, at one point, each of my pregnancies, I suffered from significant postpartum, and the postpartum was compounded by the betrayal trauma effects. So, like, we approached the church and went through their repentance process pretty like specific, like we were really dedicated to it.
Right.
And it was through that year of doing things the way the church said would bring healing that I also was simultaneously, in therapy and doing like therapy groups. I found a trauma informed yoga women's group that would meet together, and most every woman in this group had some level of betrayal in her partnership too, and so we were all connected. And this was in Utah at the time, so the significant most everybody in that container was also connected with the Mormon Church as
Right.
well, and so there was a lot of commonality in like what we were all going through and what we were working on healing. And that got me that like jump started my own emotional awareness of how far gone I really was about codependence and about my own embodiment and about like really just knowing how to alchemize the deep wounds of betrayal and how they were resonating in my emotional and energetic body. And when the year of his penance completed in the Mormon structure, yeah, like he said, we weren't closer to God. And in fact, I recognized very clearly, having now gained some way to like some clarity around trauma, I could see very clearly that that process actually also further traumatized me as a woman in this organization. And so we didn't leave the church immediately following the conclusion. Like, he actually was reinstated to full membership after his year of this penance and these terms that he was supposed to abide by. Um, and it was a little while later that we finally took steps to like be out of the church for good. But yeah, that was a big eye opener because the program was so deep that it was like, if you do it this way, you'll be healed at the end of it. And we were very far from actually the embodiment of that healing.
And I can, well, I mean, from listening to both of you, I can see why, right? Because you go through that process, and it's like you said, Britton, it's that like they just want you to fall in line, be the good little parishioner, and do what they say when they say to do it, how to do it, right? So that doesn't really solve or heal you guys, right? Because, like you said, I mean, there's so many layers to trauma, like on Carolee's side. And then even for you, right? When you're going through and realizing how much, I'm gonna say it, you hurt her, and you're going through your own struggles, right? To make it right.
Well, and I would just drop in and say, like, when it comes to this type of behavior in men, and this is not an uncommon behavior. So this is something that actually plagues relationships throughout the world. And America is not even ranked top. Europe has around 50 up to 55% of relationships struggle with infidelity. America's between 40 and 45%. So this is a massive problem, massive problem. And in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or the Mormon Church, pornography and betrayal of some kind is also just rampant. So the real question when it comes to like healing and understanding this is, why are men or women doing this? What is causing us to go outside of our relationship? And the church just doesn't even know how to answer that question. In fact, they don't even ask it. They just simply think you've sinned, you've given into the temptation of the devil, and now you need to correct and get right with God through Christ. And so the truth was, I had to face like what was it that was really causing the behavior, and knowing that. So like when I was in the heat of all of it, when I was going through it, when I was like in my pattern, it was really easy for me to feel the temptation of leaking my energy out to other women, either through texting or just almost peacocking in their presence and things like that. And it was because I was desperate for something. I was seeking that that attention, that desire, that attraction that I wasn't actually getting in our relationship. And so this is why we both needed healing. But to get back to the answer, like, so we went through the whole process of it, and I came out and I didn't feel like I was any less tempted. It was still difficult. It was still like other women were attractive, other women were almost like asking for my energy, and I didn't know how to not give it. You know, I was better about holding it just because I'd already been stung so many times, right? So at this point, it was like it was a behavioral modification, but it wasn't genuine healing.
Right. Because I mean, I think you guys would agree, like we vibe, right? We have vibrations, right? And I don't think the church understands those vibrations that all of us humans have, right? That we give out, right? Just like this saying, this is whatever you think about comes about, right? Because if I'm
Yeah, sure.
vibing like negative, right? And then I wonder why all this negative stuff is happening to me. It's because I'm putting that energy out there, right? So,
Absolutely.
you know, and I know at one point it was probably heartbreaking for you guys to go, well, we don't fit in with this church anymore, right? I mean, you guys were you raised in the Mormon church, like both as young children?
We were both sixth generation Mormon. So like not only we were raised in it, it was like our deep family culture, you know, my grandparents and then my great grandparents, like
Deep
all
in the blood.
it's yeah, it was very much our culture growing up in our family culture and our community culture. It was everything.
You know, and I've had a lot of friends growing up that were belonged to the Mormon church, and some of the greatest families I ever met, right? Because they fed me all the time because
Oh yeah.
you know what I mean? It's like food, like it was like you're here, you're eating with us, right? Like, and this just the family vibe was awesome, right? But that's got to be difficult, right? Now, not only are you, you know, trying to heal yourselves, now you're grieving that you're not a part of the church, right? And that's just another layer of stuff you got to go through. So once you realize like the church is not for you, how did you continue your healing, right? And then we'll start getting into your book about the shadow healing, because I'm very interested too. But I like to talk about your guys' history, right? Because the podcast, of what I believe, right, and I think people are going to get value from you both, is your resilience, right? You didn't quit, which is awesome, right? Like you didn't quit and say, you go your way, I'm going to go my way, and we're going to call this. Like you fought for Carolee, and
Yeah.
Carolee, you fought
Yeah,
for.
we put the real fight forward, both of us did. And there was a few times where we met that place where we were like, are we going to be able to make it? And it wasn't about like a hatred. It was actually a deep love and respect of like, maybe you just need to heal without me in the picture, you know, because we both needed to heal, and we both recognized that healing needed to take place regardless of whether or not we stayed together.
Right.
And that's a critical point of infidelity, that both the offender and offendee need healing separately and individually, regardless of whether like just ending the relationship does not mean that the one that was betrayed is healed, or the one that betrayed all of a sudden made things right. Like it just isn't the way to do it. So I mean, that's one path. You can still separate, but you still need the healing. So yeah, let's talk about the journey, because I think there's so much in it. We can just hit the shadow work stuff at the very end. But I would say, like, as soon as we left the church, and we did that through a psychedelic journey, it was actually um, uh, a Saturday in November of 2019, and the very next day we went to church, and we were still in the afterglow of our mushrooms, and this magical ceremony. It was very spiritually oriented. It was you know, we sort of did it as a spiritual ceremony, and we went to church the next day, and it was just really clear that that wasn't going to be the place for us spiritually speaking anymore. 4 days later, we were introduced into two things that helped our healing immediately. So the first one was a school for her, and I'll let her talk about that a little bit if she wants. But I was introduced into sound healing, and this became something that I got drawn to, and now I've been trained in shamanic sound healing. So we were immediately, and Max, here's the thing: when you take the step into the dark, when you're willing to just say, you know what, I don't know what the future is going to hold, because our life was planned out completely. As Mormons, they basically get you in as life members, and they track out every part of your life, including your children's life, of like how it's going to go and everything. And so jumping out of that sort of cult system, it's a very difficult journey mentally you're jumping through tons of hoops and like trying to figure out, okay, what is it? Am I listening to the devil? Like, am I, like there's so many things that you have to work through. And by the time that we had, walked away, we were ready for it. But but spirit and, God, universe, life, creation gave us an immediate blessing of like, here's 2 things you guys need right now that will help you in your healing journey.
Go ahead,
So do you
Carolee.
want to
I
do you
want
want
to
to talk
hear.
about the school?
Talk about
Yeah,
the
I'll go with
school.
that.
Talk about. Yeah, I want to hear about this and your healing too.
Yeah, so up till this point, I had been doing, like I said, that yoga informed, like trauma informed yoga healing for women. And that had been really productive for me. And I was beginning to also like, you know, a huge part of my healing has been my mothering, like the seeing my kids and witnessing their own emotional stories develop and how they were feeling caused me to be like, oh, I'm beginning to see that there's some lack here for them. How can I do it differently than what was done for me? And so I began to kind of search for that. And like Britton said, that was sort of where I was headed. And then we did this mushroom ceremony and went to church the very next day, because we had commitments there and it was a program for the kids. Um, and that catapulted me into an emotional re-education. There was what he mentioned that we found was we went to an actual sound healing experience at this place in Linden, Utah. It's still there, and it's still functioning. It's an amazing school. It's called the Institute of Healing Arts, and it's an emotional education program. And they had, you can go and meet with the trained facilitators of this integrative processing technique, and they can take you or your children through really beautiful healing sessions that are kind of meditative and guided. They're really, really cool. The process is really cool. Or you could take their year-long program. And so I didn't even know really what it was, but I felt like I needed to sign up for it. And so all of 2020, I spent in this emotional re-education, learning about everything that I didn't actually have as part of my repertoire, right? Like I didn't even know what the word codependence meant. I didn't that word took a long time for me to like compute the definition for it. But through this emotional re-education, I realized, oh, I don't know this word because I am it. I am it in every way. I'm codependent with my mom. I'm codependent with my dad, my siblings, my husband, my children. And so I had to learn how to shake off those chains that really kind of kept me small, and really process deep trauma from my childhood and generational trauma. Like it was more than just his act of infidelity. His act of infidelity shined a big spotlight on all of the places in my life and lifetimes and my ancestral patterns where our power as women were taken away, where we gave it away, where we allowed ourselves to not be sovereign and in love with every aspect of our life. And so like there yeah, there's so much more I can say, but that's kind of an introduction to what I was given, and how I spent all of 2020, which was really aptly timed. I mean, the world went into chaos that year. And here I was held in this, we at that point too, were expecting our fourth. And I was also held in this amazing emotional education space to where it really reinforced and strengthened my ability as a mom, and just my overall capacity as a human to understand my own emotions and to process them in healthy ways.
I love that because I think you're right. Generational, like the stuff that sometimes we don't realize that came from like great grandma, great grandpa, maybe even farther back, right? And it's stuff just like addiction, right? Like in my family, I have it on both sides, right? And thank God I was able to break the cycle, and you know what I mean? Because but it's funny how when you talk about this, things come up for me where I'm thinking about like the things I do. It's such a generational thing that I don't even realize I'm doing. And right. But thank God I have like you guys on here, because every time I have a great guest like you guys, I always get to turn the spotlight on myself and go, where can I be better tomorrow? Right. And but that takes a lot of strength. I don't know if I could have went to church the day after I did. I know you're not doing the mushrooms, right? I know you guys didn't do it to get high, but I'm just saying, right? In my brain, I'd have been like, I probably would have been paranoid, like I can't be in here. The death, God's gonna strike me dead because I'm high in this church. But
Oh, I was convinced that they were spiritual in nature by that time because I had read the book by Michael Pollan, How to Change Your Mind, and I had connected with the concept of I'm going to say this word wrong, entheogens, and in their spiritual historical context of over thousands of years, how native tribes and including Native Americans have used these substances for healing. So I was already in tune with it from a spiritual perspective. I was not worried about guilt or shame or any of that. I was like, I was actually going into church to just satisfy grandma, and I didn't even want to be there, but it was perfect because it gave us that contrast that we needed to see the truth.
You're right, though. It was ballsy. It was really ballsy to like be in the afterglow. I mean, this was our first ceremony.
Yeah.
And for me, it was like in that afternoon, I remember I had been deep in therapy. I'd been all these containers. I'd been really doing all this work. And I drop in with this medicine ceremony and I'm like 5 years of therapy in an afternoon. Like I left that evening going, wow, I could totally feel such a shift in my mind and in my body and in everything. And so we were both in such a beautiful love vibration that then when we had obligation, there was a children's program that my mom was coming to and my daughter was participating in. And so it was this commitment that took us there. But like Britton said, it was beautiful that we were able to have the medicine show us. And we walked out of church that Sunday and we never went back. It was like the cleanest like cut
Yeah.
for us.
love that, right? And I know my audience probably from knowing my background, right? I'm a 12 stepper. I've been to the 12. I've been abstinence is my thing, but I've had a lot of guests who share their experience with either ayahuasca, mushrooms, the microdosing that helped them get sober and overcome their trauma and open their mind, like you guys did. And I have not, Bill W. You know, experimented with LSD, right? Because of his depression was so bad. And I think there is something to it. You know what I mean? Like, because everyone, if they're paying attention, right, they're not going to get high. But what it does is it opens their mind and their spirit to different points of view. That's how I put it, right? Like bigger,
Very easy concept. Yeah, it just opens your
bigger
mind up in a big way.
perspective to look at life through, right? The bigger lens, as they say. And I'm all about, if it's going to help someone and I can have you on my show and you can help. And if there's one or two people that you've helped, then I've done my job, and like more power to you, right? Because I think it's something to be looked at, right? Because I've never heard, at least in the people that I have connected with that have come back and said, oh, it was horrible. I didn't, they've shared exactly what you're sharing, excuse me, is that they were open, right? And they feel more spiritually connected to the universe, to God, whatever that is for them. And right, their healing has continued, right, over and over again because of the mind opening to those things, like Carolee said, like the things generational that they didn't even know about, right?
Yeah.
And so talk about what your book exactly is going to be about and how the shadow work, and explain that as we get into this, right? What shadow work means, because I'm sure you're going to hit a lot of people, like you've already hit me, like that are going, I got to find out more about Britton and Carolee, because right, we all, we're human, right? I always want to make my marriage better, right? I haven't cheated on her or anything like that, but there's always ways that I look into from my guests like yourselves or other people. How can I be better every day? At least 1% better, right? And if this is an option, right, that's something my wife and I can do to keep growing our marriage together, I'm all for it, right?
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're doing together. We're coaching individuals and couples through their shadows. And a shadow, just for your audience, is basically any unconscious energy that we have in our psyche. And that unconscious energy is called a shadow because it can still actually have a lot of behaviors that manifest and ideologies that come through, and a lot of it's caused from judgment. But it's one of the reasons why Jesus said, judge not and you be not judged, because when we judge the world judges us back, and our shadow is then active. So basically, the idea here is we confront the unconscious energy, and we do that in a very conscious way. We shine the light on it. We come to it with love and acceptance and understanding. Like, for example, when I had to face betrayal issues, like I'm looking at myself and I'm asking myself the real hard questions, right? And I'm doing that through a place of love with no shame. I don't have any shame about what happened in the past. I don't. And I don't resent it. I don't regret it. It made me who I am today. Why would I have any negative feelings about it? Initially, yes, there was a lot of guilt and shame, but I have healed it. And now when it's integrated fully into my person, then it no longer is my shadow. It's no longer something that I feel separate from. It's no
Right.
longer something that I look at as not part of me, but it is part of me. It's fully integrated and whole and loved. And so through that process of looking at our shadows, we can actually spiritually and emotionally evolve in orders of magnitude. And it's really powerful, because actually that's the whole purpose of life. And so when you come at life from this perspective of like, I'm here to actually be conscious, to go from just being a being of awareness to a being of self-awareness, to fully understand and take that awareness and shine it back at myself so that I can see myself truly without judgment, that's the shadow work. And when we finally do get to see the shadows, we get to see what's the cause of those behaviors, those issues that bring us into those loops. Why am I in this situation again? Why am I dealing with another business partner that's robbing me of my money? Why am I dealing with another boyfriend or girlfriend who's just using me and losing me? Like, you know what I'm talking about, the loops, right? And then we
Yep.
have our portals of fear, like things that we won't touch, things that we're scared of. Those are actually invitations to go deeper into growth. And so there's a lot of it's funny because the pathway through the light is in the darkness. There's a lot
Yeah.
of people don't talk about this, at least in the way that we're mentioning it right now, but you must traverse the shadows, the mud, the ugly in order to get to the light. That's the only way to do it. There isn't another pathway. Like you think about the life of, say, some of the big spiritual leaders in the past, like Jesus, who traversed some great dark things, especially towards the very end of his life. But there's a lot that isn't in the New Testament that is in other books that talk about some of the shadows that he traversed. So that's kind of the basis concept of like shadow work. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to become aware of it, heal it, love it, and then no longer do those behaviors into those situations come into our life. Like, I'm not I'm not struggling with leaky energy. I'm not struggling with these temptations from other women, giving out my phone number or getting a phone. Like, none of that exists in my world anymore, because it's all been healed. And that's the beauty of doing shadow work, is that you actually evolve out of those challenges completely. So, yeah, so that's a good summary of shadow work. I mean, there's so much about our story that I'd love to jump into, but what we can just say briefly before we kind of jump into ritual shadow work is Carolee and I had to fully reboot our relationship. We had to like come to a realization that the relationship that we had built, the marriage that we created through the church, and everything that we had done was built on, you could say, lies, but preferences that weren't ours. Okay.
Right.
Preferences that weren't ours, cultural concepts that weren't ours. They were just adopted from little kid, from the church, from our parents, from the culture, from government, from whatever. So we actually, when we became fully aware of this, we decided to just end it all and symbolically cut our ties with the past. And so we reunited ourselves. We dove into sexual re-education because we didn't get that as growing up in Mormonism, and we found ourselves in finding deeper embodiment with our pleasure, and all of a sudden our relationship pleasure blew up, and like we were having it really deep, connected sexual experiences with each other that we were never having before. And this is after infidelity, right? So I want you to, your audience to consider that we went from a place where we're fully disconnected, not seeing eye to eye, emotionally separated, and spiritually just not anywhere where we should be, and fully codependent, to now we're having these really deep, emotionally connective, deeply blissful sexual experiences together because we see each other. We know each other so deeply, and now we can connect so deeply, and that like our heart is not guarded with each other. It's like fully open and honest and free and liberated. And so it's a very different experience. And that's what we want to say to your audience. Hey, look, yeah, we did this thing called ritual shadow work, but the benefits of it are incredible, absolutely life changing. And once you get on it, you're just like, oh, I get it. This is the way of life, and this is how I continue to, advance my soul and spirit.
That's awesome that you guys could be like that. And I'm sure there's people like myself going, I got to be more like Carolee and Britton, because right, we do all have stuff that holds us back. I admit, I'm a work in progress constantly, but we'll
We
get
all
in,
are, yeah.
you know what I mean? But to find ways, like you're hearing them, everybody, like listen to what they're telling you. Like you can have those connections, right? Right. And I used to always have this thing with intimacy, right? I always used to think that's equal sex, right? But we know, I've learned, right, as I opened my mind, that intimacy doesn't always mean sex. It's like what you said, Britton. I love it. It's having that open heart with my wife and letting her in, and right, which I'm a work in progress, right? Because I still feel like the old school stuff from my parents and grandparents, right? Like men don't show that side of them, right? They got to be this dude. But
Oh
I want
yeah,
to,
sure. That's all cultural programming. That's the stuff I was kind of mentioning to you
yeah.
around, like, the relationship that we inherited, her role as a mom and this and that, and my role as a protector, provider, which those are not bad things by any means. It's just that that's what we thought our life was about. And so it also, the things that we learn unconsciously, like you said, like as a man, is like we're closed off emotionally, we don't understand that part of ourselves, but actually it is that thing that caused it was that thing that was really my soul was begging for, which led me out of my marriage, if
Right.
you can believe it. So I wasn't actually finding it outside. I was just finding sexual or emotional connection, but I wasn't finding the depth that I wanted. And so it led us together, and we found the depth ourselves. And that's why it's such a beautiful story, because it's like we came from the ashes, we rose into this, like we rose through the ashes of this, really disastrous situation, and then we rebirthed as new beings and a new union, and it's a very powerfully awakened union. And so we have such an incredible message to share with people about how they can step into their heart, and it's okay, and it's nothing to be afraid of. In fact, it's the strength of the heart is the power of the masculine and the feminine. It's not a weakness by any means. It is not weakness. Think about Jesus. I want to use him as an example just because so many people can relate. I'm actually not Christian, but I do honor Yeshua and his mission. And I do believe many of the teachings that we read from the New Testament from his mouth. But I just, just like his heart was so open to people. And look at the change that he made in the world, the impact he made in the world, right? So, yeah, where do you want to
What,
drop
what do I want to
in?
add?
Well, before
I
you go,
just, I
Carolee,
guess
I
I,
wanted
Go
to
ahead.
kind of
yeah, go ahead.
piggyback off of Britton real quick. That's why I love Jesus Christ, right? Like you talk about the stories, like he didn't hang out with all the elders or the top people of the church. It was us everyday people, or
Yeah.
the prostitutes, the thieves, you know what I mean? And the tax collectors, because he said that's where the love was. At least that's what I've gathered in a book study that I did, or a Bible study I heard part of, right? Is that's where he found the love, right? Where people would be open to listening to his word and how God loves everybody. But go ahead, Carolee, right? Because
Can I follow up with that
Yeah, go
statement?
ahead.
Okay. Thank you. Because what he was really, what he was tuned into was unity consciousness. He said, when you do a thing unto the least of these, my brethren, you do them unto me. He saw himself in everyone. He
right,
saw God in every person. And so to him, there was no point in spending time with these quote unquote magistrates of the time. He knew that he could make the greatest change among those that were the common folk because they would listen. Their minds and hearts were much more open than those in the academic, towers and stuff. So
Right.
Jesus was tapped into unity consciousness for sure.
I love it. Go ahead, Carolee. Sorry to interrupt, but I was just that
No,
was
it's all good. It's great. It's fun. We, being Mormon, we had a strong foundation of the teachings of Jesus. And now that we're no longer affiliated like or members of the Mormon Church, we've actually been able to come into this beautiful full circle of like really seeing the teachings for what they truly are instead of under the paradigm of organized religion. And so yeah, I actually really love it when we bring in the teachings of Yeshua, and particularly love when Mary Magdalene's brought into the conversation. And I'll add with that, as I'm doing my own, like, I didn't have desire. It wasn't turned on in my body, right? And I identified that part of the problem was um again, speaking of generational kind of beliefs and trauma, I recognized that my mother and my grandmother, like the women in my line, we were we were programmed to be wives and mothers and not lovers. And so like I really wanted to be a lover. Like I was in love with the idea of being in love. And I had this beautiful man and this beautiful life and the white picket fence. And on the outside, everybody thought everything was cool, but on the inside, I was so broken and I was so sad and I was so hurt. And I also was so disconnected from my own pleasure. And I couldn't access it. And so part of what kind of came through for me was I had been studying the spiritual word from the context of the masculine voice almost my entire life. And so I
makes
was
sense.
introduced to a book called Mary Magdalene Revealed. And this is by a feminine theologian named Megan Watterson. And she gave this whole kind of exploration into the Gospel of Mary, the feminist gospel that we never knew we actually needed, and diving into what the Gospel of Mary actually teaches. And I read that book and made a commitment that for the next longest period of time, I didn't give it an end date, that I would only read books by female authors so I could hear the voice of spirit through the feminine perspective. So that was a really like just an important little piece that kind of held me through some really dark points. But, kind of going back to the idea of this ritual shadow work, this is a name that we've chosen ourselves to like explain what it is that we do. But what we do came to us through beautiful teachers or books or other programs. It's kind of this synthesis of these experiences that ultimately helped us transform, helped us truly heal from a cellular level. And a big component to it actually is also astrologically based. Like we're all here on this spinning planet in the cosmos. There's the sun and the moon and all of the planets around, and then there's even stars. And, like I grew up with this mindset of like, oh, I can read, my sign is Aries. I can read the Aries horoscope in like the Sunday paper and just see. But in some ways, that never really fully resonated entirely, but it's because we're made up of more than just our sun placement. And the transits of the universe are actually happening real time now, too. I find it fascinating and beautifully aligned that this conversation today, where we're talking about this death and this rebirth and looking at our shadow, is happening literally. I don't know how much you even do with astrology or no, but like the Pluto, the planet of death and of the underworld, is currently in the sign of Aquarius. That's the sign of the collective. And yesterday it went retrograde. So retrograde means it's an opportunity to kind of look even deeper at our shadows, right? So like Pluto's inviting this work Pluto's saying, hey guys, we need to not be afraid of the darkness anymore. We need to not be afraid to say, these are the beliefs, these are the patterns, these are the habits, these are my vices, these are the things that I just turn to. How can I begin to shift and allow, through, like, what is it that I can do even today? What's one thing I can do today to begin to shift into greater alignment with my true destiny, which is to be a self-realized awakened being who doesn't hold the generational trauma, that doesn't hold this lifetime's trauma.
Right.
If my life's a testament to anything, it's to that it's actually possible. And that's what we discovered through a very playful path, a dark, deep, hard path. But there's a lot of play that came into our life, and helped guide us softly into understanding what shadows are actually asking for that attention. And so, in our coaching containers, and what we're actually going to talk about in the book, Ritual Shadow Work, is actually how to work with the moon, and how it's the moon, when you work with the moon and her cycles, new moon, full moon, dark moon. There's 3 phases of moon illumination that help to show us what it is that we're being activated in and what we're being called to look at. It's pretty cool.
And like
Yeah.
this has been real quick, so informative. Like you said something, Carolee, that you guys both, it's organized religion puts that on women, right? They don't really, it's all like men, right? So no wonder women have such a difficult time, you know what I mean? Like, because they're taught from a man's perspective how to be a wife and a mother, right? When you just said it, Carolee, right? There's Mary Magdalene. Like, we need to see the woman's side, and right. And man, I'm just sitting here listening to you both, just going, God, I got so much to learn. Like, you guys have like brought so much value today. Like, I mean, if right, like, I believe that you never stop learning, right? Like, and when you find it, you're in those moments where you go, okay, like for me, instance, like I got these great guests and I go, wow, Max, you got a lot to learn, right? Like, and not letting, me go, oh, I'm 57 years old, I'm going to be stuck in my ways, there's no way saving me, right? Like, I know I can change, right? So because if you see them, everybody, they got these big smiles, that they come from the heart. I'm loving it. But yeah, what were you going to say, Britton? Because I'm so just like excited for you guys to be here, but like just in awe of what I'm learning from you both, right? Like, you guys went through one of the roughest things that any marriage can go through, if not the worst thing. And now you're like shining your lights brightly and helping others do the same. It's an honor for me to have you here. So go ahead, Britton.
Thank you.
Max, thank you so much. I appreciate those words. 60's the new 40, bro. So like, you're just coming up on it. Don't even worry.
Well, I turned 57 this year, and I told everybody that's the new 37, so I'm good.
You're good. I'll just say, that I kind of lost my train of thought.
Sorry
So
about that, guys.
no, it's okay. Yeah, I lost it. The most important thing that we did was commit to doing the inner work, which we call, shadow work. Inner work is the same thing.
Right.
And when you said the word change, and I want to clarify something there. I don't consider myself changing. Um, Even evolving's a little bit, I think, of a technically incorrect word. The best way to say what's happening within a person that's awakening, that's rising up into their higher potential, isn't that they have to adopt new concepts and new things. It's that they have to let go of them. You see that the core potential that you already are, that sort of Christed consciousness self, is already present in you. It's not that you have to gain it. It's present. You have to unwind, shed, and delayer everything that's keeping you from that. All of the small ideas, all of the perceptions of men that we've bought into over the millennia, Okay, everything from abundance concepts to spirituality to what it means to be a man or a woman to what it means to be emotionally, intelligent and everything. I shed so many things, like we left our religion, we left what it meant. We actually burnt our marriage certificate. We I left my career of 22 years in software engineering, because I was following my heart. My heart was saying, this isn't your path anymore. And I was like, are you sure? Because this is making me money and I sort of need money to survive. And
Right.
my heart was like, no, 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 it's not your path. And I'm like, are you sure? Sure. Because if I leave, I jeopardize everything that I've done for the last 22 years in the career, plus, additional years before that, and my education around it and everything. And so, like, the heart does not think like the mind. The mind is a false entity. It's a sensory organ. It helps us to understand things. It can analyze and stuff, but it should not be relied on as the primary source of guiding us in our path. That's for the heart. And so I dropped in. So when we're changing, what we're doing is we're actually letting go, and that's what part of this ritual shadow work is. Is we tune into the astrology of the moon. The moon is the main guiding component of this work, and we use the moon's uh, energy to actually help with both releasing and manifesting. So we're doing shadow work through releasing. Hey, I'm letting go of the old story that I'm a small person and I can't make money, or like I'm unable to have a partner that loves me and honors me. I'm going to let go of the story that yada yada yada, right? And then you rewrite the story using the moon's energy. I know this kind of sounds a little woo woo, but it actually is very very potent. And I only bro, let me just tell you this. She used to do stuff when we were first married, and it was even like just minimal, whatever.
Oils,
Oils,
essential oils.
essential oils. And I was like, that's voodoo witchcraft. Like,
He'd
get
make
that
fun of
stuff
it.
out of here. And so I was like not tuned into that at all. But when I left the church and I had some spiritual experiences, very sacred spiritual experiences that I had been seeking for years as a Mormon. I had those happen to me immediately after leaving within the first couple of months. And I was like, there's something going on here. I gave my life to God. I said, hey, I'm putting it all on the table, God. Show me a better path. Show me something that gets me closer to you. And so, that's when I started having these deeper spiritual experiences, and they opened my heart. And then I realized it was my heart that was trying to lead me, and I was denying the access of my heart to my life. And so, um, we're just yeah, what we're trying to do is we're trying to activate our heart. And so, like you talk about, like improving the relationship with your wife, for example, the greatest pathway to that is just deepening through your challenges together, opening up, being more honest, more open with each other, so that you can actually feel the heart of the other person in a way that you haven't before. So I don't know where I was going, but I did mention the thing I wanted to, and that was like evolving or changing is actually just delayering and shedding of old ideas and adopting newer expansive concepts that actually take us into um, you know what did you say about belief at the start of the show? You said something about if you believe it, or if you say it, you
Oh,
call it in, essentially. What did you say?
well, that's from like Napoleon Hill and them, right? Your thoughts become things. So if I'm putting out
Yes.
negative energy, and then I wonder why throughout my day I'm going, God, I don't feel good. Everybody doesn't want to talk to me or whatever. It's because of the energy I'm giving out, right? But if I'm having
Yeah,
a
and
great day, then
exactly. And I'll just mention with that the belief systems that we hold are actually looping in our brain in the background without us aware of it.
yeah,
So if your belief is that you're small, unable to make money, or if you can't date the right person, or that you don't have good children, or whatever the belief system is, it's running in a loop in the background and you're not aware of it. So you're generating that reality. Do you see? So you have to find those. That's why we call it shadow work, because you're going into the shadows. You're finding that story. You're finding me like, fuck no more. Eek, eek. And I'm going to let go of that, and I'm going to rewrite it with a new story. You got to rewrite it, because if you don't rewrite it, then you're just leaving a void there and it'll get filled with some other unconscious energy. So you
right.
have to rewrite it consciously, and then you can begin to loop that positive concept in your mind. and then you experience the reality. So you're releasing and creating, you're co-creating your life with the universe.
You know, in some spiritual communities, they talk about remembering. That's really what this is. That remembrance of who we really are is the exact thing that he just described. That decondition, the delayering, the like shedding of all of the things that we've assumed and then coming back to the core essence, you know? And yeah, we I don't know what it is about us, but we just are like, we're two Aries and we're just fire and we're just like, let's just go. So what did we do? Other things we did that we haven't even mentioned. We sold our house without anywhere to go. We sold our house. We decided to sell our furniture in the house. Like we sold everything. And then we're like, where are we going? I don't know. Like maybe let's start with Bali. So we moved our family with our 4 kids all the way to Bali. And then we evolved on this. We had this epic world pilgrimage travel that we did. And we connected with all these sacred lands. Like we've lived really big lives because we had the courage to say goodbye and lean into what could come through the shedding, you know, but it can be really scary. And that's why sometimes, you know, working with somebody in a coaching container or even just listening to these inspirational stories can give people courage to take a step that they might be scared to take, because it's really through our fears that what we want, or even through the confrontation of that fear, we realize, oh, that's not so scary anymore, and what I want's on the other side of it.
Right. That's why I love when my friend said, fearless. Will we ever become fearless? Probably not. But in tackling those things on a daily basis and facing fears and going through it, right, we actually fear less. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
like a lot of things are going through my head, but it's just like you guys are bringing things to the surface, right? For me, myself and my audience, I'm sure our audience out there today, it's like the analogy of the onion, right? Uncover, discover, discard, and then do it all over again, right? That's kind of what my
Yeah.
recovery as a recovering addict and alcoholic has been for almost 22 years, right? But I know I can go deeper, right? There's new layers I need, because like Britton's over here. I could see him out of the corner of my eye when I'm looking at Carolee, and he's like, yeah, man, he's got like there's probably so much potential for me to, for anybody who's listening. I shouldn't say just me, but anybody who wants to make change, right? And I love what you said about that loop, right? Because the unconscious brain does not know the difference between real or false, right? It just you know what I mean? And we got to change those scripts in our unconscious brain. Like when you said something about I have bad kids, right? I don't believe I have bad kids. I think they're just stuck, right? My older children, and that's a whole other podcast or maybe a private coaching session we get discuss. But like this has been a wonderful, wonderful time. We're not done yet, but I want to start asking you my question. We're going to start with fearless. So what does fearless mean for you? Whoever wants to go first, and how does that show up in your life on a daily basis now? I mean, you already gave a hit, like traveling the world with your kids. That's awesome. But let's hear it.
Yeah. I'll go first on this one. I was tuning into a call with this really beautiful witchy woman back in the early part of 22, and she asked this question that I feel is actually a really good answer to your question. She said to everyone on this call, "What are you most afraid of?" And at that time, there were a lot of things that I was super afraid of, and they had a lot to do with our relationship. And I was like tuning into them and answering them, you know? And so, like, anybody listening can literally do this practice right now. Think about one thing right now that, like, an action, one thing that you're so afraid to do. Then the next question she asked was, what is it that you want? So in this exercise at this time, I had this list of all these things in regards to our relationship that scared the shit out of me. And then what I wanted at the time was a healed relationship, a healed love relationship that was beautiful, not painful, right? My real love relationship was so painful. And this woman then said, and everyone can think, what do you really want? What is it you're really calling forth in your life? She then said, it's through your fear that you're going to get what you want. And I realized, oh my goodness, like I'm standing on a cliff edge ready to jump into water, and I'm scared out of my mind. I'm the kind of person who I don't seek for thrills like that. Like, other people go cliff jumping and they think it's the greatest time of their life. And I'll stand there for 20 minutes, unable to like literally jump off the cliff,
Right.
but I realized that fear that I feel, somebody else who's there excited, excitement and fear are the same vibration. It's just how it's programmed to receive in our own bodies. So I began to look at my own hesitations and my own, I mean, through acceptance, accepting I move more slowly, accepting I can be scared on this cliff edge and not really inclined to want to jump into the water. But then also saying, can I transmute my fear and understand that other people feel this exact same thing and they translate it or understand it as excitement? What can I do with what I'm afraid of and think, ooh, there's unknown here. I'm excited about the possibilities, right? And so, like, I had this beautiful awareness come to me, and I made a conscious choice to, when I felt afraid, to allow it to alchemize into excitement. And it wasn't an easy process for me. Like, it took some conscious decision making to like choose into that energy. But, we really lived that. It was scary to sell everything we owned and move across the world with our 4 kids. It was scary to like not have a house except for where we were living, wherever we were there, like there were all these things that most people would look at and be like, "Oh, I can't do that." If there's anything that you're like, I can't do it, but it sounds kind of cool." Like,
Right.
lean into that. It sounds kind of cool bit, and allow yourself, you feel more courageous when you come up against things that kind of make you scared, and then you see, gosh, I really actually have a lot of courage, and that reinforces our sense of like self-awareness and self-love, when you're like, oh, I can do these hard things, and I
Right.
serve, not only do I survive, I like am thriving on the other side. It's a fascinating phenomenon.
It, I agree 100%. That's like skydiving at 18,000 feet, right? You want to talk about overcoming a fear of heights, do that at 18,000 feet. But to me, right, like looking out of the plane and can't see the earth, I'm like, oh, what am I getting into? But it was one of the biggest rushes I've ever had. And kind of going to what you guys are talking about and Brenton did earlier, right? Like I have a friend who I feel is very spiritual, right? And he always goes like, how do you pray? Where do you find God? And he asked me these questions one day. And then one day he pointed and put his finger right on my chest. And he said, God is right in there. You don't need to look anywhere else, right? God is with you. And I was like, that was one of the most profound things that I finally went, oh, I get it, right? Like he's with me, or the universe is with me at all times. I just have to learn to tap into that, right? So what is your definition? What does fearless look like for you, Britton? And how does that show up in your life?
Yeah, so like Carolee has touched on it, and I would just give a little bit of a different twist, from my own perspective. But basically, fear will always be present in our experience when we are at thresholds, when we're at a place of growth. And it is the fear that's pulling us into the place of growth. So the reason why it's draped in fear is because only those that are courageous will go. And so when it comes to dealing with fear, one is have courage to step towards your fear and look at it. Two, have the faith that you'll make it through no matter what. Like almost step into a place of like exploration or curiosity instead of like judgment. The judgment makes the fear stronger. And so when we're just like, oh, this is interesting, I'm curious, what would it be like if I did X, Y, or Z, or like, whatever. And finally, the third thing I would say is trust. And we have to fall into trust with the higher power because we don't know, we don't have control, we don't, we're not, yeah, like I was saying earlier, we co-create reality as through our thoughts and perceptions and our feelings. That's true, but we're co-creating. We don't have the full control of what's happening, and so life will continue to give us very interesting situations that will always grant us opportunities for growth. So trust that you're in the process, that the process is not happening outside or in the future or tomorrow, or that the universe only has you in the worst dire circumstances when you're dead on the street or about to die. Like it has you, it's guiding you through the process. So trust in it, trust and surrender.
I love that. That's one thing I've always told the people like I sponsor or counsel, right? I always say, just trust the process, and they give me, like, I probably gave you like, okay, really? But I know when I was told that, like, I gave my sponsor the craziest looks. Like, he just goes, I was there too. Just trust me, right? I love it. So now we move on to the next one. Happiness. As you can see, I put a Y in it, knowing I put a Y in it, and whoever wants to go first can go first. But what does happiness mean to you? And how does that show up in your life on a daily basis?
You want me to go?
Yeah, you go
Okay.
first.
Happiness is, to me, an underlying contentment about my decisions, about the path that my life is taking, and about the commitment I have to overcoming struggle and the trials that I'll meet. Because like happiness is, what do they say? Happiness is a choice, right? It's not like something, it's not an externally created circumstance. That's like a temporary spawn of joy. It's not true happiness is just this underlying contentment. I choose it. I choose to be happy because when I'm in the middle of something important and my child comes up and knocks on the door and is like begging for my attention or whining or something and pulling me away from the thing I want to do, I'm choosing to shift my energy because that's where life is calling me. And so I choose into that moment of like, oh, I'm going to be now present with this child, and I don't have to have resentment. And I can be present with this person that is also a soul undergoing an incredibly difficult journey, having forgotten who they were. And so, like you just find happiness in each moment. I think it's just choosing into it. And it comes easier when we have the Christ consciousness, when we see each other as um each, you could say children of God, or you could say like a divine spark, or connected to the all. Like, we are all equal. There is no hierarchy in God's house. We are all equal.
I love it.
Um, I love that I had you go first because what I want to say is like such a piggyback on what he just shared. Happiness to me is presence, right? And he kind of just like summed that up. But and presence is easier to attain when you do this kind of deep shadow work, when you're constantly clearing out the energy and letting go of old stories. It makes it easier because when we get triggered or we're unsettled or we're feeling the ennui or the dissatisfaction in life, like all of that, it are signals that there's something deep within us, some shadow that's not really been integrated or not been witnessed. And so when you continually just choose into like making it a regular pattern of tapping into shadow work, and we do it through our connection with the cycle of the moon, um, it makes it so much easier to be present, and the happiest moments that I've found myself in have really literally been as I'm preparing food in the kitchen with my kids and I'm able to just really drop into that moment and I see the sweetness that they're acting together, or I look out the window and there's a beautiful bald eagle that flies that I just catch a glimpse of it, and just really living in this present moment and being grateful. I think happiness is that presence and that gratitude for that presence. It's like that cheesy thing of like the present is a gift because it's literally present, right? But it's true. Like there's truth to that, and that's where I found the greatest happiness.
I love it. Gratitude is extremely important, at least for me in my daily life, right? Because I got told one day, Max, if you're not grateful today, what day you waiting on? And it's, you know what I mean? And that's where
Yeah.
you talk about that like I'm sober right now at this moment. I don't have everything I want, but I'm grateful I'm alive and I'm not sitting in a 6x9 going, God, I wish I was at a meeting or I was with Carolee and Britton. You know what I mean? Just doing so many things. This has been an awesome time, you two. I cannot say enough how much I appreciate you being here. But I want to ask you, if the audience wants to get a hold of you, like how do they get a hold of you? If they want coaching, they want to do this deep shadow work, like where can they
Yeah.
reach you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're doing is we're offering coaching specifically around ritual shadow work. But we also offer other services, coaching services, if people aren't um, looking for that level of depth in their spiritual evolution. There's lighter coaching that we can also do, but we also do couples coaching, and that's something that we're passionate about as well. But you guys anybody can go to themagicalstoryofus.com, and on there they can join our mailing list. We're going to be releasing our book later this year, so they'll be on the list for that, and then we'll also connect with the coaching services through there as well. So themagicalstoryofus.com.
I love it. And we will be having you back once your book comes out for sure. And we'll dive into
Amazing.
that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I would love to have you back. But you're not quite off the hook just yet. Now I get to ask you my favorite question that I ask of all my guests. And it goes like this. So Carolee and Britton, what is the one piece of advice you could give my audience to help them grow as human beings and become better people?
You get to go first this time. I already know what I'm going to say, though.
What I'm going to say might be what you're going to say. I'm going to say it
We'll
first
see.
and get credit for it.
I love it.
No, commit to your own healing. Like really, truly commit. I knew with or without him, I could see that the looping in our partnership had threads that connected deeply to pain and trauma and sadness and stories from before he was ever part of my life. And being married to him now is the greatest gift, and one that I've worked for and fought for. But with or without him, I knew I needed to commit to my healing. And so the biggest piece of advice is like, see yourself first as an individual who deserves to have a fully integrated, embodied human experience, and allow yourself to say yes to that for yourself. Saying yes, living what we like to call the full fuck yes would be my thing. Like lean into that yes, that sacred yes, find that sacred yes, and it will change your life.
Yeah. The most important thing is doing the inner work, because it will make the greatest impact on your life, the life of those immediately connected to you, and the world. It is sort of the paradoxical truths that we come across in life, and that is that if you focus on yourself, not in the selfish way, but in the way of understanding that you are the reason you exist in this universe, and that relationship means that you need to understand yourself. So if you focus in on yourself, you make the greatest change in the world. It's kind of paradoxical, but it is the truth. And so I would just say, maybe the baby step for anyone listening today is just center yourself and think, what is one thing that life is calling me to change, and rewrite the story right now. I'm no longer going to be like this. Write it in the positive. I am a person that attracts this or this or this into my life. And you will start to see, when you open just a simple gate like that, a simple doorway in your mind like that, that you will see magic enter, and so many opportunities open to you.
Love it. Love it. Wow. This has been an amazing time, you guys. I told you. Well, I know I learned a lot, and I know my audience did, and you brought so much value. So again, thank you for being here.
Thanks, Max.
Again, it's been an awesome time. I can't even say anymore. I'll just be repeating myself, but it's true. Anyway, you heard them, everybody. If Carolee or Britton made you think, if they taught you something, if they made you smile, and my famous, if they made you go, I like that, please go to iTunes and leave a 5-star review so more people can find the podcast. And again, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in this world. This is Max from the Fearless Happiness Podcast. Until next time.
Are you tired of being weighed down by life's traumas and struggles? Join the Fearless Happiness lifestyle and let us guide you toward a brighter future. Explore our past podcast episodes and get a copy of the Fearless Happiness book to ignite your inner strength. If you or someone you love is battling addiction or facing challenges related to unresolved trauma, know that we are here for you. Visit maxnijst.org, maxnijst.org, and take the first steps toward finding your fearless happiness. Thank you for listening. This has been a production of Fearless Happiness.